Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this continuing coverage of my games from the 2015 U.S. Open. Here we are in round 7. In the previous 6 rounds I scored 3 wins and 3 losses, so I'm right at about par and about okay for me. And once again in round 7 I have the black pieces and I'm facing a higher rated opponent with the white pieces. He has a rating of 2043, not as highly rated as some of the other players that I've faced, but pretty decent rating anyway. He starts off with knight f3. I go knight f6, and then he plays g3. So with this move, we've gone into a Reti system, a Reti opening. I play d5, plays bishop g2, and I go knight bd7. I guess a little more common here is c6, but I get that in the next move, and I don't think the particular move order here has a lot of significance. White is just going for this setup pretty much regardless of what I do, sort of like a King's Indian in reverse. I decided to play e5 here and grab a little more space in the center. He goes knight bd2 and bishop to c5. This is the first move that maybe is a little bit questionable. It's not clear. I was trying to get an active post for it, and I didn't know if the bishop on d6 was doing so much. Even if the e-pawn gets knocked out of the way, this structure over here on the king side looks pretty solid, so not clear what the bishop was doing there. But I could kind of lurk on this diagonal and wait for things to open up. That's one idea. Or I could have considered developing it to e7 as well. On c5, it's a bit of a target, and we'll see that at a certain point. He decides at this point to play e4. That will just stop me from ever playing e4 myself, and kind of closes things down a little bit. I castle. And I should note that white is not playing for any big advantage in the opening with this kind of setup. What he's playing for is a long game, sort of expecting to drag the game out and take advantage of me at some point. Okay, so I continue with rook e8. I think these are all pretty much normal moves. Queen c2. And then I play knight to f8. And this move, I had this idea of bringing the knight over here to one of these squares, and maybe trying to get some kind of kingside attack going, but it never materializes. So really this move is actually a strategic blunder. The chess engine is actually recommending I just drop the bishop back to d6, and so that's an indication that maybe I should have put the bishop on d6 in the first place. It still thinks I'm okay after bishop d6, but after knight f8 I'm actually worse. And we'll see why. There's 2 reasons. First of all, there's a tactic here. So if you want to try and spot the tactic, see if you can find the move that white can play here. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away. White can take this pawn here. It's a typical center fork trick. He takes on e5. I take back with the rook, and then he pushes on with d4, forking the rook and the bishop. This, I guess, is playable for black. The chess engine gives this funny line where the rook comes over here and tries to activate on the h-file in combination with the bishop, and white's pawns are a little bit messed up. But so black has some compensation, but basically he's a pawn down at this point. So already my opponent could have grabbed some material here, but he just played calmly instead, and played the move b4, kicking my bishop back, and I drop back to b6, still thinking it'd be useful to have the bishop on this diagonal. He goes knight b3, and I complete my knight development to g6. And as you watch the rest of the game, this is the strategic part of the mistake. So I completed my maneuver with the knight, and now it's just looking out at these squares, and actually this knight sits here for the whole rest of the game and doesn't do anything. And white slowly maneuvers and gets pressure on the queen side. So the game is kind of downhill from here. Let's see. Let's go on. He plays h3, controlling some more squares, so I don't have ideas of hopping in here with the knight or the bishop. I decide to take, at least open up one line, and then go queen e7. Thinking maybe developing the bishop and bringing the rook over. He goes a4, so expanding on the queen side. So bishop e6, a5, kicking the bishop back to this diagonal, where it could have been sitting here on this diagonal the whole time. But anyway, there it is now, and he's gained some tempo on the queen side. And after kicking the bishop, he plays knight c5, and this is a good move. He's coming in here, he's hitting my bishop. Stop that. He's hitting my bishop, and he's also threatening this pawn. But I find an interesting way to counter this. So I'm still in the game at this point. The fact that I have kind of a strategic disadvantage in this knight, but it's not a critical failure yet. So I developed the bishop with the tempo, moved the bishop with the tempo on the rook to e1, and then that gives me time to move the pawn. So I managed to save the material. He just drops his knight back to b3. So I was starting to feel pretty good, and I think black is still okay in this position. Let's see, I played rook a to d8, centralizing the rook. He went knight b to d2, kicking my bishop, dropped back to e6. You know, it's interesting, he wasn't too much worried about wasting time. This knight came out and came forward and then retraced its steps back to the square it started from. And but he's kicked me around some too, and he's gained space on the queen side. This is one of those positions where I guess tempos don't matter so much. It's kind of a closed position. In spite of the fact that there is one open file, it still has kind of a closed character to it. And he can get away with these kind of slow plans. So he's chased my bishop back. And then he goes knight to g5, kicking the bishop again. And I drop the bishop back all the way to c8. I don't want to give up my bishop pair unless I get some compensation for it. So at this point he takes, and I take with the bishop, and this turns out to be another little mistake. The thing is, well, the bishop is on a good diagonal. The thing is it can't stay there, because after bishop takes b6, his knight hops into c5, hitting the bishop. So the bishop, or c4, so the bishop doesn't last on that square. So it's probably just better to bite the bullet and take with the pawn here. You know, my position looks good for just a second here with this active bishop, and maybe this bishop able to enter the game on a couple of diagonals. The fact that it's back on the back rank is not much of a problem, because I've gotten the rooks out, so the rooks are not being blocked by that bishop. It can sit back here and it's ready to spring in at any moment. So for the second, my position looks good, but then he comes in here with knight c4, hitting my bishop, and you know, I just didn't see any great way to respond to this. I guess I could have dropped the bishop back to c7. It might have been better. But then, oh yeah, that gives up the pawn, right? So I kick his knight, trying to force this back. He grabs the bishop first, and so white ended up with the bishop pair after all. And then he drops his knight back to f3. So that was kind of the second little mistake that I made. The first was putting the knight over here where it's out of the action. The second one was this bishop b6 move, which I didn't calculate ahead enough, or at all, perhaps, in that position, and didn't realize I was going to end up losing the bishop pair with that move. So I realize I've got some weaknesses over here, and my pieces are over on the king side. By over here, I meant on the queen side. I have some weaknesses on the queen side, which he can attack. He can penetrate with his rook at some point. Well, my bishop is guarding the square right now, but there are some latent threats over here on the queen side. And so I wanted to try and dissolve these weaknesses by pushing on a c5. This is not a bad plan. He takes, I take, but it still leaves me with this one pawn, which is kind of weak, and that'll be the theme for the next section of the game, how he exploits that. He starts out by attacking that pawn, and I just developed my bishop off the back rank. I want to keep open the option of pushing this pawn forward if necessary. I don't want to push it forward in particular, because it's on a dark square here. If I push it forward, it's be on a light square where it's kind of blocking this bishop in. And it helps me control some squares over here on the queen side. So I'd really rather keep the pawn there. But he keeps putting pressure on it. Cancel that. He advances the rook to a5. I go rook to c8 to defend it. He goes king to h2, just kind of a waiting move, I guess. Maybe he wants to liberate this bishop, so the king is taking over the task of defending the h-pawn. I go rook to c7. I was thinking, I could just double behind this pawn here and make it pretty secure. He went rook to b1, so operating on the open files on the queen side. And yeah, unfortunately, since I placed my rook up here, it's not so easy to oppose these rooks. Yeah, if I were to place my rook here, he could trade it off and then grab the pawn. So He's managed to establish some control of these open files here. Anyway, I double on the C file. He plays knight d2, now bringing a knight in. So just there's been this gradual buildup of pressure on the queen side step by step, and my knight is still sitting over here useless, my extra knight. So I start bringing this knight in, knight to e8. Now one move I did consider at this point was knight to d7, but that's a very passive defense. I didn't really like that idea, although it does hold. The chess engine rates this position as better for white, but not necessarily winning. Even after knight e8, and also after knight d7. But I just didn't want to get stuck in a passive position. I had ideas of bringing my knight to d6. So he went rook to b6, and now cancel that. Rook to b6. The other rook came into the 6th rank here, and I thought, well, this would be an opportunity to release some of the pressure and trade rooks. So I moved my rook to c6. But actually, right here is a way to continue with the game, is to play knight to d6 like I planned. I planned to play knight to d6, hitting some of these squares. And once again, I can eventually push this pawn forward to c5 if necessary to hold on to it. And at the same time, the knight on c6 exerts some influence on the center, and then I can come up with a plan to get this back into the game. So maybe it's playable. After knight d6, though, I was a little worried he could just double up with his rooks like here, and then the knight, the chess engine comes up with the funny move knight to b7 as a way to hold on. But it's clear that white's a little bit better. Actually, knight to f8 here is the top choice of the engine. Just immediately trying to get this knight into the game and not worrying so much about what's going on over here. So, but both of those moves would be better than what I played. And again, this is probably a case of not calculating. I place the rook here. He takes. I take back. Certainly I could see that much. And then he brings his queen in with a tempo on the rook. And have to do something. I drop back to c7. Now he just drops his queen back to a3. A nice little maneuver. And now he's got 3 pieces piled up on this pawn here. And so eventually I decide I'm forced to push it forward to c4, which is kind of my escape hatch that I thought I had in any case. This invokes a trade of queens. He takes. I take. He plays bishop f1, piling up the bishop on this pawn. And now we can see the purpose of that king defending the h-pawn. This bishop is free to take, so that's a real threat. He's got 2 pieces piled on it. And, I had actually calculated ahead this far, and I played the move rook to c7, thinking I'd finally kind of, if not solved all my problems, at least I was holding on to all the material and I could play on. And, I was expecting a move maybe like rook to a8, pinning the knight, and I thought, well, I could wander here with my king and wriggle out of it somehow. I do need to defend this knight, and I have to worry about this check, but my rook is guarding that square. So I thought I could survive that, but he plays the simple move, but surprising to me, this is a move I missed, rook to c5. Opposing this rook and just winning the pawn here, and there's no way to save it. So let's see, I played king f7 here, king f8, and let him trade. He trades rooks. Perhaps a little better would have been rook b7, but actually there's a winning advantage for white in this position regardless of what I do. And he kind of mops up in a pretty clinical fashion, so there's not a whole lot of counter chances that I get after this. Let's see, I'll play on a couple more moves. King f8. Yeah, he took on c4. I played f6, wanted to shore up these pawns. So the knight there is hitting here, and now he takes the rook off and plays knight to d6, hopping in here and causing some trouble for me. So basically he's a pawn up, and he has a simple winning strategy, which is to push this pawn forward and force me to give up a piece to stop it. My only drawing chance, which I thought in the game I played on with hopes that I could draw this for a long time, My drawing chance is to trade off all of these pawns and sacrifice a piece for the extra pawn, and then he doesn't have enough material to mate me after that. But he just doesn't allow that to happen. So I am going to, because it's a long game, I'm just going to step through the rest of the game so you can see it without much commentary. So there's just a lot of maneuvering. I get my king over in front of the pawn, and he counterattacks with his bishops. The other advantage that he has, besides the passed pawn and the extra pawn, is he has the bishop pair here, and he does a good job of maneuvering those. So I push my pawns forward to get him out of the range of the bishop. And let's see, we get to this point here, play knight c6. And king c7 to unwind here. There are various attempts that I could have tried to last longer here, but basically anything I do is doomed to failure here. So let's just go on through the game. Let's see, different alternatives I looked at. I brought the knight in, try and trade off some more pieces, but this is not helping me all that much. You know, I have managed to get some kind of blockade going, but his bishops control a lot of squares, and he brings his king over now after getting my pieces tied up, and I was kind of stuck for a move. And he finally trades off my last bishop and grabs another pawn, so now he's 2 pawns up. We go on a few more moves, and I resign at this point. I still had hopes of trading off his bishop and grabbing another pawn, but he's securely defended the bishop, and I recognize it's hopeless at this point. So anyway, it's kind of an interesting game. I was sort of strategically outplayed. You can see a few kind of small mistakes in the beginning led to a bad position that kind of went downhill. Anyway, let's take a look at the next game. In this game, I have the white pieces, and I'm playing a lower-rated opponent. My opponent's rated 1565. I kick off with d4, plays knight f6, and we get a Nimzo-Indian, c4, e6, knight c3, bishop b4, so all mainline stuff. e3, playing the Rubinstein variation, and now he plays b6. This is not the top choice, but it's like the third choice in this position after castling and c5 are the main moves there. And an interesting way to play. And I've seen this before, and there's different ways to play. I tried f3 once, but I think that's not so good. It's a little bit weakening over here on the king side. One of the top moves is just knight to e7, but I discovered, or knight to e2. But I discovered in investigating it that I can get away with this move, bishop to d3, and just allow bishop to b7 and knight to f3, supported by the queen. Yeah, check this out. And this is a way to play it, and it's similar to the way I play other lines in the Nimzo-Indian. So this is okay for white. And now my opponent makes his first mistake. Castling here is the main move. Also, an interesting idea in these positions is knight to e4, supported by the bishop. So those are the two main tries in this position. Plays knight to c6, and this blocks this bishop, and that's it's a real error in this position, because now it makes it easier for me to play this move e4, which I'll get in at some point, and that gives me quite an edge. So I castle here. He decides, since I've castled, to trade off the knight. And then he castles, and now I push on with e4. So that's all because he's put this knight in the way of the bishop. The idea of this formation is the bishop here and the knight here prevent me, or at least try to slow down this push to e4. And now he's kind of given this up pretty easily. So I have an edge in this position. Plays h6. I go e5, kicking the knight. And the knight has no good square. It could go either to h7 or to e8, and the other squares are not really safe. If it goes out here, it gets trapped, so it can't go there. And same thing for this square. So yeah, it just is out of good squares. He chose to go to e8. I go bishop c2. I'm just going to line up my queen and bishop and threaten checkmate. A very simple move. And he plays rook c8, which is a mistake. He actually needs to play. His position is already critical because I've gained so much space in the center and I have immediate threats. He actually needs to play the move f5 right here. And if he had done that, the game might have gone like this. f5, he takes f6, Knight takes f6. That's taking back with the knight is often a defensive idea, holding onto the square. I line up with queen d3, and then this knight comes over to e7. And I have a slight edge in this position. You know, I've got my pieces pretty well lined up for the attack. But these knights are controlling these key entry squares, these key light squares. Yeah, maybe I can maneuver my knight in like this. There are still ideas for me in this position, and I'm still better. But, well, this allows black to hold on. Instead, he kind of wasted a move here. Instead of reacting immediately to my threat of queen d3, he played rook c8. And now I play queen d3, and it's hard for him to find a good answer. Once again, f5 is forced, and we'll get a similar sequence. But now it's my turn to move instead of his turn to move. We were in this position before where he had to move knight to e7, and the rook was still back over here. So he's gotten the same position, but he's thrown in the move rook to c8, and now it's my turn to move. Let's see. One option here that he could have considered is queen to f6 as a way to try and defend against these threats. But this still works out in white's favor. Queen comes in here with check, king to f7, and then pushing on with d5 is an interesting way to continue, and the best way to continue. So it's interesting that the queen coming to this square, it's guarding some of the entry points, couldn't keep the queen out of h7, but the king maybe can escape on a good day. Let's see, I'm kicking the knight here. Knight, there's this exchange, this is a chess engine line, queen takes, and then bishop a3 to try and cut the king off from escaping. And then knight to d6, sorry, cancel that. Knight to d6, blocking that diagonal, so and then rook a to e1. And, well, the game would continue here. Notice that white is giving up this this pawn on c3, but it's probably a little too dangerous for the queen to take that pawn. Anyway, this position is given as favorable to white by the chess engine, but not necessarily immediately winning. So actually, knight takes f6 is the best defense here. But that was just an interesting alternate try. So anyway, here's a good point in the game to see if you can spot the tactic. If you have the white pieces in this position, put on your attacking hat and see what you come up with. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away. The move I played in this position was bishop takes h6. And this is, it turns out, I checked it with the chess engine later, it turns out it's a valid sacrifice. He didn't take me up on it. He didn't take the bishop. He played knight to e7, bringing another piece in, which is a good move. And in fact, that knight e7 is a top engine choice. But what happens if he takes? Well, I saw about this far. It's pawn takes bishop, the queen comes in with check, king here is forced, queen here check, king here, queen here check, and king back in the corner. And I thought, well, this would be good enough. You know, basically I have ideas of bringing the rook in, and I've got two pawns for the piece, and you know, his pieces seem like they're out of place. So you just have the feeling from looking at this that this should be a winning attack, and the chess engine confirms it's a winning attack, although the way I was going to play it with rook to e1, you know, it gives him time to defend. The queen comes over here to e7, and it's guarding this key square. I mean, what I'd really like to do is drive this knight away and mate over here, or check here and mate here if his rook comes. Notice his rook can't come to this file because queen here is potentially mating. Well, there's still these pieces in the way. So anyway, it's a bit tricky here. So he could have played on in this position. The chess engine recommends the move d5 right here is the best way to play on. The idea being, if this knight is chased away, my knight can jump into the game. And the other funny thing is that knight moves in this position don't seem to help a whole lot. Basically, when the knight comes here to g5 to threaten various things, the queen has time to get up and help out on the 7th rank. So, you know, once again, it's not so clear. It takes me 3 moves now to get over, and you know, he's got time to bring his queen to g7 and threaten to trade things off. So the most accurate way, the chess engine actually gives these positions as about even. So I have compensation for the sacrifice, but maybe not a winning attack. So the key move in the winning attack was to push this pawn to d5, try and activate my knight maybe on this square, or if he chooses to defend with the queen, then grab the material back by taking the knight. And that's the winning plan here. Anyway, after bishop takes h6, he played the move knight to e7, defending. And like I said, that was actually the top engine choice. But now I'm just a pawn up, and I'm still attacking. I continue with bishop g5. He decides to eliminate one of my attacking pieces with by grabbing the knight here on f3. And then he brings his queen over to e8 to try and defend. I bring my queen to the h-file. So with threats of just taking the knight and then mating over here, or invading at least, he goes knight to g6. And now taking and invading is not so clear. I tried to maneuver my queen back this way, queen to d3, hitting this knight and just threatening to win it. The knight goes back to e7, and I'm still have ideas of taking here and invading with a check, but I want to bring the rook in. So I play the rook over. He plays queen to h5, chasing my bishop, and now I grab on f6. Although the chess engine shows that the move f4 right here is the best way to proceed with the attack. Just keep all of these threats latent and defend the bishop. So his queen was attacking my bishop, and also bring the other rook into the game with the an interesting, with the bishop defended, the other rook comes into the game and chases the queen away. So that's the best finish there. Okay, I took his knight there. He took back with the rook, so he can bring his rook over to defend along the h-file. I lift my rook. He goes rook c to f8. By the way, these moves I'm playing are all good enough to keep a winning advantage. So even if I didn't find the best move there, my moves are still good at this point. And now I can invade on the h-file with rook to h3. His queen goes to g5, and now I come in with the check, queen to h7 check, drive the king to f7, and interfere with the coordination of his rooks. And now I play the interesting move f4. So I thought this was just winning. I'm just trying to chase his queen away. And if he takes, that's the first thing you have to notice, that rook takes doesn't work because of rook takes, queen takes, and rook to f3 wins material. I win the queen there. So he can't take the pawn. So I thought he had to move his queen. And he did move his queen. He moved his queen to a5, and that's how the game went. But there was one crazy defense here that neither of us spotted, but the chess engine finds, of course. And that is the move king to e8, which is it's a move he wants to play anyway, king to e8. It gets his king further away from my attacking forces. And but the main idea is it reconnects his rooks. So now I can't take his queen because rook takes here is checkmate, opening up that f-file as a double-edged sword. So all of a sudden I have to be careful and defend the f-pawn. And then he can play this move g6. And this position is not at all clear. My queen is almost trapped. I'm still a pawn up in this position, but my pawns are not the world's greatest pawns. If I have to trade everything off to get to an end game and survive this position, then it's black has drawing chances. So it's gone from a clear win to about even with that move f4 if he found the move king to e8. But he didn't find that move. Pretty tough one to find. Also, you're feeling the pressure. So his queen ran away to a safe square. And it's also, there's attacking ideas here, although this is defended along the third rank. I bring my rook to g3, attacking this pawn. And now I thought he had to play a move like rook to g8 to defend. And, there's still no immediate breakthrough after rook to g8. I can push on with f5 and try and open things up a bit. But it's still going to be a game from there with an advantage to white. White has a pawn and he's attacking, so he has the advantage. But anyway, my opponent defends in the wrong way. He tries to defend with knight to f5, And of course, I can just trade that off, which I do. He took back with the queen. That was his idea, getting the queen back into the game. But now I took here with the rook. And there's actually a forced mate here. The king only has one move. And then I can check. I can keep checking with the rook all along this rank here, all along the seventh rank, and eventually his king is forced back at some point, and then the queen comes in to deliver mate. So there's a forced mate from this point. Anyway, he resigned here. So anyway, I liked that game. I thought it was kind of cute. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for the next one. I have one more game to show from this tournament, and I'll see you then. Bye.